Hi everyone and welcome to Beyond the Pale. I am continuing today with Motive and this is part 2. If you haven't seen part 1, I look at the interview between BTK and Catherine Ramsland. And as we know, Catherine Ramsland was Bryan Kohberger's criminology professor. So if you haven't seen that, head over to Motive part 1 and take a look. Before I start, I do want to issue a trigger warning. This is a true crime channel. There may be issues here that you don't wish to look at or hear about. So please, if you feel you might be sensitive to some of the content, please think carefully before continuing. Okay, so instead of deep diving into individual serial killers, because really all you have to do is type in their name into YouTube and a ton of them will come up and you can learn all sorts. I thought I'd do something different this time, and I'm taking 10 infamous serial killers, and I've got 17 points that I've chosen myself. Obviously, I will have missed out perhaps some points that you might find interesting, so I apologise for that, but I did stop at 17. And we're going to go through and see how they apply to each serial killer. And then I want to look at the suspect in the Idaho 4 case, Bryan Kohberger, and also whether we think that the way these crimes were committed, as far as we know, shows signs that this was a serial killer in the making. So let's crack on. I'm going to start with Dennis Rader, it's pretty much where I left off from part 1. And let's ask some questions. I've done a lot of research. If I've got something wrong, please do comment below and put me right. I did do some quite extensive research on each serial killer, but it doesn't mean that I didn't find the correct information. Or if you have more information, I'd love to read about it. So here we go. Let's start with BTK. Did he join the military? Yes. Did he harm animals? Yes. Now, abused as a child or had mummy issues? No to abuse as a child. I couldn't find any information about that, but he did claim to have lacked attention from his parents and felt his mother often humiliated. So yes to mummy issues. Bully or was bullied? Perhaps by his mother. I don't think he was. I couldn't find any information on whether he was a bully or was bullied either as a child or as an adult. Drug alcohol abuse, again, I couldn't find anything of significance. Married, yes. Children, yes. In fact, his family life appeared to be normal, and he attended church, and I think he was on the council of the church, so appeared to be this pillar of the community as well. All looked pretty normal. Were they sexually motivated murders? Yes. RAPE? No. As discussed in my last video, this was too dark even for Rader. That was a line he would not cross. Okay, the criminal mind is so fascinating to me that, it was okay to bind, torture, strangle, but I'm not going there. Okay, so the answer to that is no. Tampered with dead bodies? Yes. He used a disguise? Yes. He dressed up as a telephone repairman to gain entry, certainly to one of the victims' homes. Satanism involved? No. His method of killing is all in the name. It was bind, torture, kill, and then he would strangle or suffocate them. Kept souvenirs? Yes, and he would take stockings and underwear and dress up at home when his wife was out, or he'd go to motels and dress up in his victims' clothing. How many victims attacked at one time? Well, infamously, allegedly his first attack was 4, and that included 2 children. He then went on to murder mainly single victims, one at a time. Did he enjoy the notoriety? Well, yes, it was. He gave himself the BTK nickname, and he definitely enjoyed the cat and mouse game with law enforcement. I think it was more the game and the control over law enforcement that he enjoyed. Other notables, as I've said before, he was actually studied by Kohberger's professor, Catherine Ramsland. Ted Bundy. Joined the military? No. Harmed animals? Yes. Abused as a child or mummy issues? can't find evidence of abuse. However, he had massive mummy issues because he was told growing up that his real mother and father were his grandparents, and that his birth mother was his sister. So he grew up alongside his mother, believing it was his sister. And when the truth came out, he had big issues with that. Bully or was bullied, reports of both as a child. Drug, alcohol abuse, he used alcohol and marijuana. Married, yes, when he was on trial, but he did have some relationships with women. Children, oh yes, conceived on death row. How is that allowed to happen? I cannot get my head around that at all. Sexually motivated murders, yes, most definitely. RAPE, no, but it was mainly necrophilia. So yes, he did also tamper with the dead bodies. Did he use a disguise? Yes, he feigned injury to lure victims to his car, and he also dressed as a figure of authority like a cop or a firefighter. Satanism involved? No. Method of killing, mainly bludgeoning or strangulation. Kept souvenirs? Yes. How many victims attacked at one time? So this was mainly one at a time, but as we know, he built up to attacking 4 in a sorority house on one occasion. It's important to note that 2 of those victims survived. Also, on the same night, he moved on to another house and attempted a 5th attack. She survived also because the noise of the attack raised the alarm. Now, as you can imagine, I'm going to go back to this point in a different video, because when we look at what happened at 1122 King Road and what happened here, I think it's a really interesting thing to look at. Did Ted Bundy enjoy the notoriety? Very much so. You only have to look at him in court. He's just strutting around the place. He's loving the fame. I will put a link down below to his very last interview, which was the night before he was executed, and he's not quite as cocky in this interview. So have a look at that, and if you haven't seen that, that's definitely worth a watch. He does explain something of himself. I personally think this was his last-ditch attempt to try and sort of get out of the execution, and also his last moment of fame. Other notables. Now, this is particularly interesting. Bundy had a deep-rooted fascination with pornography from a young age, and he would find magazines in his neighbour's trash, and he said it started off very softcore, but he said it was like a drug. The buzz needed to get bigger and stronger. It got onto harder pornography, and then eventually the ultimate buzz where fantasy would need to become reality. Okay, so our next serial killer is Jeffrey Dahmer. Joined the military, yes, but he was thrown out due to his alcoholism. Harmed animals, yes. Abused as a child, yes. He was allegedly SA'd by a neighbour, but he also had mummy issues because he was neglected by his parents and abandoned by his mother. Bully or was bullied. There were reports of him being bullied as a child. Drug or alcohol abuse. Yes, he was an alcoholic. He was also prescribed Halcyon to aid with his sleep, but he used the drug on his victims. Married, no. Children, no. Jeffrey Dahmer was a homosexual. So, sexually motivated murders, yes. RAPE, yes. We know, if you know anything about Jeffrey Dahmer, he certainly tampered with dead bodies. Used a disguise? No, he used to pick them up in gay bars mainly. Satanism involved? Well, there was definitely some fascination with Satanism because Tracy Edwards, his last victim who survived, said he'd put on the video of The Exorcist 3 before planning to kill him and was chanting under his breath. So there was also this altar, wasn't there? He planned to create this altar with his victims' skulls on it as a kind of worship to them. So there's definitely a satanic undertone to his crimes. Method of killing, mainly drugging them, then strangulation. We know what souvenirs Dahmer kept, and they were pretty grisly souvenirs. But he also took photos of his victims and kept those in his bedside drawer. How many victims did he attack at one time? He was pretty much a one-at-a-time serial killer. Did he enjoy the notoriety? No, not particularly. This is just my opinion, but I don't feel or think that it was about a game to Jeffrey Dahmer. It wasn't about playing games with law enforcement, about the fame. He was lonely, actually, and obviously very depraved, but he wanted to keep these people with him. That's why he kept all their body parts. He didn't want them to leave him. So there wasn't really a fame game going on for Dahmer, in my opinion. Other notables, I found interesting that his father blamed his behaviour on a double hernia operation on his scrotum as a 4-year-old. He also alleges that Dahmer had a head injury, but I couldn't find details on that. So if you know anything about that, please do comment. His father thinks that this double hernia operation certainly contributed to Dahmer's behaviour later in life. Next one, Ramirez, the Night Stalker. Did he join the military? No. Did he harm animals? Well, yes, he hunted them. So he was a hunter and allegedly enjoyed sneaking up and stabbing them. So that was kind of the animal issue with Ramirez. Don't really think there were reports of specific torture. Was he abused as a child? Yes, he was. Bullied or was bullied by his father. So he sort of had father issues rather than mummy issues. But I think in a psychological sense that when a child has father issues, an element of blame is apportioned to the mother for not backing up, for not being the support that they need. I think if you have a mummy issue or a father issue, the other parent is going to be involved in that issue, if that makes sense. Drug or alcohol abuse, well, I think we can tick everything. I believe he started glue sniffing actually in school. He didn't attend school much, but there's definitely reports of glue sniffing. That then led to marijuana, cocaine, LSD, alcohol, heroin, and I think LSD was a pretty big one for Ramirez. And there were reports that he would not just drop a tab, but there would be 3. So yeah, interesting. Married, yes, he got married on death row, but that he was not known to have relationships. I did find evidence of one, but I couldn't back it up. It wasn't a great informative site that I found this on, that he had a relationship with some woman for a year, but I found other reports that said he was never known to date. So yeah, I'm just going to say he got married on death row. Children, no. Sexually motivated murders, yes. RAPE, yes. Tampered with dead bodies, yes. Used a disguise, no, not that I'm aware of. Satanism involved, yes, he was most definitely Satanist. He often described Satan as his hero. Method of killing was shooting, stabbing, strangulation, bludgeoning, machete attack. Now, this guy was particularly frightening because he didn't really have an an MO. So his victims could have been any age, anybody, old lady, young girl, male, and his method of killing could have been anything. So that really unsettled the society he was in. Did he keep souvenirs? Yes. How many victims attacked at one time? Mainly one at a time, but also couples. Did he enjoy the notoriety? Yes. And other notables, Ramirez allegedly suffered from epilepsy, but what's particularly interesting is he had a cousin and he witnessed great violence by a cousin that he actually admired. So I think that possibly influenced Ramirez in some way or another. Moving on to DeAngelo, the Golden State Killer. So did he join the military? Yes, he served in Vietnam actually, and later became a cop. Did he harm animals? Yes. Was he abused as a child? And did he have mummy issues? Yes. According to neighbours, he was actually abused by his disciplinarian father. I'm not so sure about SA, but it's also reported that he was neglected. Bully or was bullied by children or in school. I couldn't find information either way. Again, with drug or alcohol abuse, I couldn't find anything of significance. He was married. He did have children. Sexually motivated murders? Yes. RAPE? Yes. But actually, like Ramirez, he started off as a, well, what's the term? Burglarizing. He started off with burglary that led to RAPE and then continued to murder. So it was a progression with DeAngelo and Ramirez actually. Did he use a disguise? Ski mask and gloves? Sorry, did he tamper with dead bodies? No, not that we're aware of. Satanism involved? No. Method of killing? Mainly binding, then bludgeoning, but also did use the gun. Kept souvenirs? Yes. How many victims did he attack at one time? It was one at a time, and then he progressed to couples. Did he enjoy the notoriety? Well, kind of. Law enforcement believe he called them several times claiming to be the killer, where he was going to be, that they'd better watch out or be careful. I'm not sure that all the calls were verified, but there is a sense that he enjoyed this cat and mouse game. He also taunted his victims by phone. Also before the crimes and after the crime. So imagine going through that, and then he finds there was one victim, he must have run across her in the diner, and then he called her at work to taunt her. Just horrific. Other notables, this is pretty significant, I think. He witnessed the RAPE of his sister when he was 9 or 10 years old. Moving on to the big guy, Kemper, 6'9", the co-ed killer. This guy did some horrific things. Anyway, he didn't join the military. I really do think he was too tall. Did he harm animals? Yes. Was he abused as a child? Mummy issues? Yes, he was abused and mocked by his alcoholic mother. I'm not saying SA'd, but she was particularly cruel to him and made him live in the basement. Was he a bully or was bullied? Well, there were reports of him being bullied as a child due to his height, but we can certainly see that he was bullied by his mother as well. Couldn't find anything significant on drug or alcohol abuse. Not married, no children. Sexually motivated murders, yes, most of them, but you'll see in a sec there were others. RAPE, I'm afraid our Ed was into necrophilia, which means yes, he did tamper with dead bodies, and there was some pretty gruesome stuff and brutal stuff going on with Ed Kemper. Used a disguise? No. He'd mainly pick up hitchhikers. Satanism involved? No. Method of killing was, I think he used a gun, bludgeoning, strangulation and smothering. So a bit of everything. I think it depended actually on his victims. I'll discuss that in a second. Did he keep souvenirs? Yes, he did. How many victims did he attack at one time? Mainly single victims and pairs. Did he enjoy the notoriety? Well, he certainly enjoyed the cat and mouse game with law enforcement. He wanted to become a cop, but he couldn't because of his size, so he'd hang out with cops at bars. Definitely he liked the game. So the other notables here, he murdered his grandparents when he was 15. He shot his grandmother. Now, his mother shipped him off to his grandparents. He wanted to know what it was like to shoot his grandmother. I think she might have annoyed him. He said he quite liked his grandfather, but shot him so he didn't have to learn that his wife had been killed. this guy was released on parole, so they let Ed Kemper back out into society, where he murdered his mother. He did awful things with his mother after she had died, then invited her mate round for dinner and strangled her. After that, I think that's when his hitchhiking phase kicked in, and I think that it was mainly bludgeoning, strangulation, smothering from then on, and they were mainly co-eds, young girls, hence the name, the co-ed killer. So that is Kemper, pretty complicated chap, like they all are. And we're going on to Berkowitz, son of Sam now. This one's a little bit different, I feel, because I don't think they were sexually motivated murders, but who knows for sure. Did he join the military? Yes. Did he harm animals? Yes. He also participated in arson. That is another sign when you see young kids fascinated with arson. Obviously, not everyone who commits arson becomes a serial killer, but it's a common thread amongst these people. Was he abused as a child or had mummy issues? Well, he had major abandonment issues because he was adopted. And yeah, that really did affect him. Bully or was bullied as a child. There are reports of both. Drug, alcohol abuse, LSD when serving in South Korea. That's the only information I could find. Married, no. Children, no. Sexually motivated murders. Now, motive is unclear. He claims to have been part of a cult. It's still unclear to this day whether other people were involved. So, yeah, it's really hard. It was more of a shooter, so he was just kind of taking people out. So there was no RAPE. He didn't tamper with bodies. He didn't use a disguise. But again, was Satanism involved? Yes, very possibly, because that's what he has claimed himself. Mainly shooting. I think they're all shootings. If I'm wrong, please put me right. Didn't keep souvenirs. He mainly attacked single victims and pairs or courting couples in cars, that sort of thing. Did he enjoy the notoriety? Yes. But the other notable here is he claimed he was carrying out the murders under the instruction from his neighbour's dog, who was the devil. But he later admitted this was a hoax. So I'm not sure whether he was genuinely part of a cult and was a Satanist, or felt he was carrying out Satan's instructions, or if the whole thing was a hoax and he just did this anyway. So I find motive with Berkowitz a little bit foggy. I put Aileen Wuornos in as the female serial killer. Now, this is really interesting to me because everything is different with Aileen, and of all the serial killers, I don't know if you've seen Monster or looked into her or watched documentaries on her. I feel incredibly sad for her, not condoning one single thing she did, but what a horrific life and upbringing she had. I felt something for her. I felt that life really dealt her some really shitty cards, and I feel, my opinion, that these murders that she committed were of the built-up anger, rage, the injustice of her life. She claims they were self-defense, but maybe the first one was. I don't know for sure. Obviously, the victims can't speak for themselves because none of them survived. But I think she just had enough. Anyway, she didn't join the military. She no reports of harming animals, but God, was she abused as a child. Most definitely both, yes. She was abandoned by her birth parents and then abused by her grandparents, other family members, and some, as in neighbours. She just was like a toy to everyone around her, basically. So I would say she was bullied. I think she also bullied other kids, reports of both, but she was certainly bullied in her home environment. very young when she started drug and alcohol abuse, and she used to sell favours to get money to purchase both. No, she was never married. She did have a relationship with a female, Tyria Moore, who initially stood by her and then shopped her in to authorities. So she was betrayed by her as well. But then you can argue, well, perhaps Tyria Moore did genuinely have better morals. Children. Yes, she had one child believed to have been fathered by a family member, and this child was given up for adoption. Were her murders sexually motivated? Well, no, they weren't motivated sexually, but she was working as a prostitute when she murdered her victims. They were clients. So this is an unusual case in that the murderer is the prostitute and not the other way round. So RAPE, no. Tampered with dead bodies? Well, no, but she would rob them, but that was more for survival, which ties in with souvenirs. No souvenirs, but would take things to sell or take money. She didn't use a disguise, no Satanism involved. Her method of killing was shooting, and it was one at a time. They were her clients. Didn't enjoy the notoriety. She just wanted to survive. Other notables, her father, her birth father, was a convicted sex offender who unalived himself in prison. So if ever you saw a complete mess of a life, I think Aileen Wuornos is the prime example. Now we're on to Killer Clown, Gacy, number 9 in my serial killer checklist. They're all so complicated. So he's Killer Clown, but it's really unlikely that he dressed as a clown when he committed the murders. So I will go on to explain. So first of all, did he join the military? No, he was actually labelled too fat. But his early career was in politics. His father mocked him for that. He worked for the ambulance service and then became a mortuary attendant. Did he harm animals? Yes. Was he abused as a child? Yes, by his father. Now, that's not essayed as far as I know, but bullied. So, yes, his father was a bully. Bully or was bullied. Reports of him being bullied as a child as well as by his dad. Drug or alcohol abuse, both. Married, yes, twice. Divorced twice. And he had children. But yes, he was married, but he was a bisexual at the time. I think it was with his second wife that he admitted to her that he was bisexual. He then became a homosexual. So his murders were sexually motivated, and yes, he did commit RAPE. Did he tamper with the dead bodies? Well, yes, because he buried them all at his home. Used a disguise? Yes, but not the clown. He pretended to be a cop and also carried a sheriff's badge with him. No Satanism involved. His method of killing was strangulation and suffocation. He kept souvenirs. And he mainly attacked single victims one at a time, but he might kill more than one in a night, but not together, if you know what I mean. So sometimes 2 a night, but yeah, one at a time. Enjoyed the notoriety? No, I've got no knowledge that he played cat and mouse games or contacted the press. I don't think that was part of it for him. Other notables, so this is the summary of Gacy. He did dress as a clown, but that was kind of to innocently entertain children because he was, this kind of pillar of community. He'd entertained kids, but of course it's ironic that he's actually this monster, but also is a children's entertainer. Sounds like Jimmy Savile to me. My final one, number 10, is Israel Keyes. So this one's another interesting case. He did join the military. I think he excelled in the military, actually. And did he harm animals? Well, yes, he was made to hunt for his own food when he was a very young child. So he'd kill anything with a heartbeat, and there were some reports of torture. animal torture. Now, he was abused as a child in a different kind of way. He describes his childhood as militia style, incredibly religious upbringing. They were superior to other people, but isolated from society. He didn't go to school. I don't think he had friends. He lived in a tent. And as he got older, kids and adolescents just ran from him because his behaviour was so abnormal. So again, no reports of bullying as such or being bullied, but I would say definitely bullied by the parents, really kind of forced into a really odd way of life. But yeah, not your traditional sense of school bullying. He didn't go. Drug or alcohol abuse. Now, the only reports I could find was there was some alcoholism in the military, but I couldn't find anything other than that. So I don't think it played a big factor in his life. Married? No, but he did have 2 serious relationships with women, though, and one of them bore his child. His murders were sexually motivated. He RAPED'd them. And yeah, he tampered with the dead bodies. And there is his final victim that you may know of. He staged a photograph where she was actually already dead. And he made it look like she was alive and sent a photograph to her family in order to get money from them. So it was like a ransom note, and this is my proof of life. They did send him money. And this moves me on to point 11. Did he use a disguise? Yes, to disguise his identity from cameras. So he had his last victim's bank card. Her family had put money into her account because they thought she was still alive and they'd get her back. And he just withdrew lots of cash from the ATM. So he would disguise himself just so that no one could recognise him. Definitely a Satanist. There was Satanism involved. His method of killing, mainly strangulation with 1 or 2 shootings. He did say that he really didn't like shooting anybody unless he had to. And back to the Satanism, just to explain, it's like he rebelled against his religious upbringing. He stated there's reports that he had a blazing row with his arguments, told them he was an atheist, and they disowned him. So I think from there he decided Satan was a better bet. Shocking. Anyway, how many victims did he attack at one time? Single victims and also pairs. And also souvenirs, he would rob them. So he'd just take things for money. Did he enjoy the notoriety? Not particularly. I've got no record of him playing games with Ellie. He just had his own thing going on. It was very military style, I feel. And he had these kill kits. He was very organised and would plan murders well in advance. And he'd hide kits, like for long periods of time in different locations. Big mileage between these locations. And he knew where all his kill kits were. And they were there ready for him for when he was ready to commit the crime. So yeah, he's another quirk. He's got his own MO and his own quirks here. So other notable is he hero worshipped Ted Bundy. He was like his hero, and he also studied other serial killers, but not officially. It was at his own leisure. So there we have the last of my infamous serial killers and the checklists. These are all the ones that have been caught and convicted. So now we've got to our suspect, Bryan Kohberger, in the Idaho 4 murders. It is really important to note that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. We haven't got all the information, so we can't conduct these checkpoints in the same way. But I think you'll find some very interesting contrasts with what we've looked at already. So, number 1, did he join the military? No, he didn't. It looked like he was a cadet or something, according to that photo. So, he's obviously had some military training. It looked like press-ups to me. But we don't really know a lot about it. But we know he didn't join the military as a career move. Did he harm animals? Well, there's been no reports of him harming animals come forward. He was a vegan, or he is a vegan, I should say. But what is fascinating to me is this poor dog that was skinned and filleted 3 miles away just 3 weeks before the murders. What's particularly interesting about this is that law enforcement said immediately they did not feel this was connected in any way. So this says a couple of things to me. One, did law enforcement know who skinned the dog? If they did, why has no one been charged with that, and why isn't it public information? So I think we can discount that. I don't think they had a clue who has skinned little Buddy. So did they have a suspect when they said that? Well, according to law enforcement, no, they had no suspect. So they had no suspect and, in my opinion, had no idea who skinned Buddy. So why did they tell the public and the press that they didn't believe it was connected? Sorry, law enforcement, that was a hunch. And I think it was used to kind of take some of the panic out of the reports that were coming out and the horror of this crime. I think the last thing they wanted to do was think, well, actually, there was that dog and this could be connected, because that suggests there's possibly a serial killer on the loose. And I don't think they, the fact they said, oh, this is definitely a targeted attack before they had a suspect, they were trying to take as much horror out of what had happened as they can for everyone else in the town. So I don't think we know at all whether Buddy was connected or not. I wouldn't be surprised if that was connected. Was Kohberger abused as a child? Now, I can't say one way or another, really, can I? And none of us can. But it looks like he had an average upbringing with a loving mother and a supportive father. We never know for sure until the facts come out later, but also it's important to note that abuse doesn't always happen within a family. But all we can say at the moment is it doesn't look as if that was the case. Bully or was bullied? Well, we've got reports of him being bullied. I think if we're to believe those witnesses, then he was. And there's somebody's come forward and said he was a bully, and all I can find is that he had someone in a headlock and was patronising, talked down to this person. I don't see that as particularly being a bully. But who knows? Maybe he did it every minute of every day and this guy was sick of being in a headlock. I don't know, but I think he was more bullied than a bully, but that's just my opinion. Drug, alcohol abuse. We know he was an ex-heroin addict. What he was doing at the time of the murders, as far as drugs and alcohol are concerned, we just don't know. Married? No. Children? No. Does not appear to have had really any significant relationship with anyone. Nobody's come forward other than a dodgy Tinder date and a cheerleader who moaned that he had a crush and left her love notes. There is the story that he had an Asian girlfriend, reports, but I don't think they were in a relationship. But I'll be honest, I'm guessing. So yeah, nothing of real significance there. Now, sexually motivated murders, this is a tough one, but all we know is a fact that according to law enforcement, there were no signs of SA at all. So that ties hand in hand with RAPE. The only DNA, apart from the 3 unidentified male DNAs, one close to a victim, as far as Kohberger's DNA, we've just got a tiny minuscule speck on a knife sheath. So I feel if they were sexually motivated, that there might be more DNA there possibly. There'd be more signs of being bound. You know, that perversion I was talking about in the BTK video I did. It doesn't feel like this crime has that. But whether there's an incel situation going here, so they were sexually motivated in a frustrated kind of way, I still think we'd have had more evidence at the crime scene that some pervert had entered the home. So we don't know if the bodies were tampered with. I would say in the time frame that's been given, it's a likely no. But we don't know if there was some staging taking place. There's questions over timeline, what time the murders happened. It's all a bit of a big mystery to us at the moment, I think. But if we're to take what law enforcement said in the PCA, I don't think there was time. I don't think there was time to stage. I think, from what I can gather, it was stab and go, frankly. Used a disguise. Well, if we're to believe what's in the PCA, Dylan Mortensen witnessed a figure clad in black wearing a ski mask or ski-type mask. Certainly a mask where the eyes and the eyebrows were visible, allegedly. Satanism involved, well, that's unknown, but there's no reports of ritualistic evidence. Nothing has been released to the public. Method of killing, stabbing. Kept souvenirs, unknown, but according to the defence, there's absolutely no connection with Bryan to the 4 victims. There's no victim DNA anywhere that Bryan's been, and it doesn't look to me like they found any souvenir of any kind. Not to say he hasn't hidden them in the countryside in a hidey hole somewhere, but also nothing to say, in my opinion, that someone else isn't sitting home with his stash of souvenirs. Anyway, how many victims attacked at one time? 4. Did he enjoy the notoriety, if it's Bryan or whoever committed this? Well, we've got no reports of anybody contacting law enforcement, gloating, playing cat and mouse. Nobody contacted media. Whoever did this certainly was lying low. I will point out, though, that for somebody who is supposed to be smug and loving every moment of it, I haven't seen it myself, and Kohberger would rather not have cameras in the courtroom at trial. So I would answer that I personally don't think he's enjoying a moment of this at all. Other notables, Kohberger studied criminology at WSU, case ongoing. But there's a couple of really interesting points here to me. And when we look at the 10 serial killers that we've just gone through and this case, what stands out to me straight away is the method of killing is stabbing. All of these perverted serial killers we've looked at, or the ones who are angry, like Wuornos, strangulation, smothering, bludgeoning, shooting. Stabbing is actually, with serial killers, pretty rare. So that's really interesting to me. Also, the childhood background is fascinating. Certainly with mummy issues. Every single one of the serial killers we've just looked at had issues in their background with parents, with family life, that was either horrific abuse or abandonment issues. So I personally can cross that off for Kohberger as well. Yes, we've got this drug abuse and the fact he was bullied in school. Then we go on, there's no signs of SA, there's no signs of RAPE, there was no binding. It really does seem that someone opened a sliding door, was really pretty angry, conducted these horrific stabbings and got out of there. I don't see a similarity with any one of these serial killers we've just looked at, but that's just my opinion. So please let me know your thoughts. I'm now going to do a summary of what we can see is the most common thread between, you know, the serial killers and their crimes, like their background. So I'm going to do a quick how many out of 10. I'm not going to count Kohberger in these results because he's still a suspect. He has not been convicted. So out of the 10 serial killers we've looked at, here kind of are the results. A summary. Okay, so these are the scores. I have just counted the 10 convicted serial killers, not Bryan Kohberger, because he has not been convicted and we are still missing some of this information. So let's look at how these pan out, and I think you'll find it interesting. Number 1, how many joined the military or law enforcement? That's 5 out of 10. How many harmed animals is a high score at 9 out of 10. I believe the only one that didn't was the female Aileen Wuornos. How many were abused as a child or had mummy issues? 10 out of 10 had identity issues, abandonment issues, or were abused. How many were bullies or were bullied? That's either as children with other children or at home. That's 7 out of 10. How many abused drugs and alcohol? I've got a 6 to 7 out of 10 there because Israel Keys, we're a bit uncertain. There are reports he abused alcohol in the military, but we don't have, or I can't find any further information, so I don't know if that continued. How many were married or had sort of relationships? Now, I've put 6 out of 10. I am not counting the marriages on in prison, in jail, or on death row. I'm talking about day-to-day life. Same with the children. How many had children? Just 4 out of 10. Now, I'm not saying that. I'm not counting Aileen Wuornos. I'm talking about how many had children in their lives, their day-to-day lives. So it's 4 out of 10. How many were fathers? I've got Israel Keys in there because he did have a child with someone and he did care about this child. So 4 out of 10. Sexually motivated murders. I mean, 8 out of 10. It's nearly a 9 because even though Aileen Wuornos, it wasn't a sexual perversion, I think the way she was treated in life, which involved sexual abuse, helped motivate these crimes. So there is that link to it. But I think I would count it more as a rage killing, an anger killing. So I've kept it at 8 out of 10. But it's good to keep that in mind with Wuornos because the motive is it's in the background. RAPE and necrophilia, that's 7 out of 10. Tampered with the bodies, that's 7 out of 10. Now, also with sexually motivated murders, there was evidence at the crime scenes that these were sexually motivated, that there was rape and necrophilia, and then that there was tampering with dead bodies, whether it was staging. There was crime scene evidence, so that's really interesting. Now, the use of a disguise, 5 out of 10. It's interesting to see that some were used to lure, to not just hide identity, but to con their victims, like the telephone repairman. It does make you question if there was perhaps a DoorDash disguise, or was that used as a way to get into a house? We don't know. I've still got a question mark over this DoorDash driver. Satanism involved, that's fairly low, but still 4 out of 10. Preferred method of killing. Now, it's important for me to say preferred. 0 out of 10. That's not to say that I think, I can't remember which one it was now. One of them used a knife, but still their preferred method of killing was strangulation. I think it was Israel Keys. Strangulation, suffocation, bludgeoning. Those seem to be a serial killer's preferred method of killing. Not one of those serial killers preferred to stab. I think that's a really interesting statistic. Kept souvenirs, 7 out of 10. that includes body parts. How many attacked 4 victims in one go? That's 2 out of 10 of these serial killers. Bundy built up to 4. You know, there's all these comparisons with the sorority house, but 2 of those 4 that Bundy attacked survived. And the 5th attack that night, I reiterate, survived because of the noise of the attack, and that raised the alarm. We're going back to this in a different video. Enjoyed the fame or the game or the notoriety? We've got 6 out of 10. Well, that concludes my serial killer study. I hope you found it interesting. I found it interesting. I personally conclude that whoever killed the 4 at 1122 King Road was not a serial killer in the making. There are exceptions to rules. Every story is different. This is just my opinion. I think we're looking at the spree killer, the rage attack, the anger. And of course, we've got to look at incel theory with that. That's others have done it, but I want to look at it myself. And then let's use all of this information that we've got and take it to other possible suspects and motives. I look forward to seeing you again soon. I'm sorry that took so long to do. But as you can see, it was quite a lot of work and investigation. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment below. I'd love to know your thoughts, or as I said before, any extra information, or if you think I've got any facts wrong, please do tell me. Do take care, and I will see you soon.
They call me a god. 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 Let's go. I'm about to go off like a weapon. Fuel to the top, got a filled up engine. In my thoughts, obsession. I will not stop, no, I'm never second guessing. I got a God complex. Haters love to hate, but I never feel pressed. Got a lot on my plate, but I never get stressed. I'll take all the pressure like I'm acing this test. Tear it up like I'm Jason. I see the world like it's ready for the taking. I see this place like a game I'm playing. Straight to the bank to collect my payments. No negotiations, it's my way, I was born impatient. And like a damn Freemason, I'll run this nation. They call me a